Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Emma Gillespie.
I'm Sam Koslowski.
Matildas star Mary Fowler has alleged she experienced racism at her former French football club Montpellier in her recently published memoir. Now, the club has strongly denied the allegation, so today we're going to unpack what Fowler said happened, the response from not only the club but also the broader sporting world, and the mental health conversations her book has also sparked.
And why don't we start this conversation off with Mary Fowler herself? So give me a sense of who this very young athlete is.
Yeah, so we're talking about one of Australia's most talented footballers. She is only 22 years old, but of course, Mary Fowler is a beloved Matildas player. She currently plays for Manchester City in the Women's Super League, which is England's top tier women's competition. And as I mentioned, she is a key player for our national football team. If you were not a Fowler fan before the 2023 World Cup, you were probably one afterwards. She was everywhere during that incredible campaign from the Tillies. She's even got her own Barbie doll.
Yeah.
And she was born in Cairns and comes from a sporting family. Her father played professional football in Papua New Guinea, and several of her siblings have also played at the elite level.
And just like a lot of our best footballers, she hasn't played a lot of her actual career in Australia. She's in France.
Well, exactly. So she moved to France when she was just 17 years old, so young. That was in 2020 when Fowler joined Montpellier, a club in the French Women's League. And moving overseas at that age, as you've mentioned, Sam, for Aussies, it's not that uncommon. There are so many talented Aussie players playing in Europe, in the UK, professionally for football because, you know, it's just generally such a world-class competition over there and considered stronger than what is available domestically to footballers here. So Mary Fowler spent 3 seasons at that French club before moving to Man City, where I mentioned she plays now. So she is one of the best women's football players in the world.
And she has recently published a memoir. That's why we're talking about her on the podcast today. Take me through the allegations that she has put out in this book about that time in France.
Yeah, so the book that Mary Fowler has just released is called Bloom, and in it she wrote that at a ceremony for players who were departing Montpellier in 2022, she and another teammate, Ashley Weirden, were the only two who were leaving the club who didn't receive flowers.
Right.
Fowler wrote, quote, "Afterwards, we got inside the changing room. Some of our teammates questioned why we hadn't received any flowers. A few of the girls laughed about it, and then one of the other players came over and handed my friend and me some bananas, saying, 'Here, have these.'" She goes on to say, "Not receiving flowers was one thing, but as 2 of only 6 black girls in the squad, receiving bananas wasn't something I could laugh off and forget about." Fowler also claims in the book that both she and Weirden were left feeling a similar way, quote, "many other times during her second year at Montpellier."
So, some very serious allegations from Mary Fowler in this book, but it's not the first time that we've seen something like this in European football.
Exactly. This association between bananas and racism in the sport has a long and very ugly history, stretching back as far as the 1960s. It's been used as a racist gesture towards black players for decades, and even as recently as 2022. Now, that was when Brazilian footballer Richarlison de Andrade, he's also a current Tottenham forward, had a banana thrown at him after he scored a goal against Tunisia in a friendly game in Paris. He expressed outrage at that racist act, and that was the same year as the alleged incident that Fowler wrote about in her book.
And so now that those allegations are out there, how has Montpellier responded to them?
The club has strongly denied the accusation. They released a statement saying there's no evidence to support Fowler's account. They have really downplayed these claims. They pointed out that Fowler was actually under contract with them until 2023, which seems to be their way of questioning why she would describe herself as leaving in 2022.
Right.
And in their statement, the club said that if such incidents had been reported and substantiated, they would have taken all necessary measures immediately upon being notified. And they added that racism is a serious issue to the club. According to some reports now, though, Montpellier may be considering legal options in response to the allegations, so looking to challenge Mary Fowler's claims.
Hi, I'm Zara. I'm the co-founder of the Daily Aus, and we started this company because we think news can be done differently. If you agree, you can hit subscribe. It's the best way to help us grow. Now, back to the video.
Yeah, that's a really strong reaction to the allegations, puts Mary Fowler perhaps in some legal difficulties there. Has Mary Fowler, now that she's had a chance to understand and see how the club has responded, has Mary Fowler or anybody else responded to the way in which Montpellier has denied these claims?
Fowler herself hasn't made any additional comments beyond what we have publicly written in her book, but we have heard from her coach, the Matildas coach, Joe Montemuro. He has spoken out in support of Fowler last week, calling her honesty courageous and said that it highlighted the pressure elite athletes face. We also got a statement from Football Australia, the sport's national governing body, which said, quote, Mary Fowler has shown a lot of courage in sharing her story, and by being open about her experiences, she will help contribute to broader conversations around athlete well-being, inclusion, and respect in sport.
And I think this is one of those stories that come up, unfortunately, in sport quite often. I mean, here in Australia, pretty much every single major sporting code has had its own issues with racism within the last decade, if not much, much longer than that. Even some are similar to the issues that Mary Fowler has identified or alleged here in terms of, comparisons to gorillas and the presence of bananas and imagery and all that kind of thing. But does it raise more questions about the culture of women's football more generally?
Yeah, there has been some commentary from advocates working to fight racism in sport who say this type of incident goes much deeper across football, across multiple codes, as you've touched on there, Sam. But I think it's also worth noting that there have been a lot of comments on social media against Montpellier, people accusing the club of long-standing racism. Now, of course, those are unsubstantiated comments, but that gives you a sense of the dialogue happening online about this. Racism in football, as we know, has been an ongoing issue for several decades. But I think what's interesting about Mary Fowler's story is that this is an issue that's often been more visible in men's football.
Sure.
And we've kind of got women's football growing and achieving so much in recent years, is there is now an increased visibility and scrutiny over the darker side of the sport or alleged issues like racism. So I think, there's good and bad from that, but it says a lot about the profile of the sport that we're talking about this today, that Mary Fowler felt she could write about it in her book a few years on.
And I think that darker side of the sport will inevitably lead to mental struggles for those who are alleging that they're victims of it. And that's one of the most powerful parts of that book, I think.
Yeah, so this memoir you've probably seen floating around on news sites, various headlines, but it addresses mental health. Fowler's been really candid about her experience. And she said that when she was a teen athlete living overseas, it was a particularly difficult time. She wrote about periods of self-harm and experiencing suicidal ideation. Of course, the context there being she was 17 when she was living in a foreign country, trying to establish her professional career and clearly dealing with significant challenges at the time. As you've mentioned, Sam, if she was experiencing racism while also dealing with being away from home, struggling with her mental health, you can see how all of those things would easily compound.
And so, Em, where does this leave things now, both for Fowler and the club? I also think it's worth mentioning we're 100 days away or thereabouts from the Asian Cup for women's football that's going to be here in Australia.
Exactly, coming in March. This is a really difficult situation. You have Fowler making these very serious allegations, speaking publicly about her memoir. Then we've got this club issuing a strong denial, dismissing the allegations, suggesting that there could be legal action. Whichever way you look at it, though, I think the sentiment is here that Fowler opening up about mental health struggles, about her lived experience, is making the sport better for more conversations of that nature. The Matildas coach, Joe Montemuro, described her as something of a role model to all athletes. So I thought we would finish on his quote. I just applaud Mary to come out and talk about racism and mental health sets a great example of what needs to be done if these things do happen in elite sport.
Thank you for taking us through that, Em. And I think it's a really good story for us to be covering as part of TDA Sport, trying to grow the way in which sports journalism is done in Australia as well, and highlighting types of stories like the ones that we've discussed today.
Exactly. And if you want more TDA Sport, you can sign up to our newsletter that comes out every afternoon. There'll be a link in the episode description.
That's all from us, though. We'll be back this afternoon with your headlines. Until then, have a great day.